to kick off this day with a presentation, how to get the most out of the Koha ERM module. And this is a presentation by Jessie, Zairo, and Kelly. I had it? McElligott. Okay, all right. It's morning. And it's all yours.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Who's ready to learn about the ERM? Who knows what ERM stands for? Oh, good. Oh, yes, somebody yelled out. Felicity.
Electronic resources. We had a surprise, we'd give it to you, but we don't.
So Kelly and I are going to talk today about the ERM. So just a quick history. Coral is an open source ERM platform. Has anyone heard of that? Yes, awesome. So that was developed by Notre Dame University Libraries many years ago, launched out to a community so any user can use it. And over the years, the Koha community and the Coral community talked to try and get integration between the two. So in most, you could bring in your vendors from the acquisitions module in Koha to be visible within Coral. And you could see any type of match that you had an electronic resource for in Koha's bibliographic record. But the community had a need for having one platform rather than having to go to two separate platforms to manage this. So what we're going to talk to you today is about the ERM that is now available in Koha. It was first launched in 2211, and this enables you to essentially keep track of all of your e-resources, whether you have journals or ebooks or databases or subscriptions that you want to maintain in the system. The Koha community went about this process a little bit differently than maybe some of the other developments that they do. 3 different vendors got together and said, we want to make sure that this ERM moves pretty quickly. So Jonathan Drewer, who's a Koha developer, spent about 6 months developing the platform and working very closely with other Koha developers. It went into Bugzilla, multiple people in the community tested it, and then it came into the 2211 release. Now, what we're showing you today essentially doesn't talk to a lot of other pieces in Koha yet. So in order to get it into Koha quickly, it's basically a standalone. We're creating agreements, licenses, and e-holdings. We're also going to show you what's coming and the plans for ERM to talk to positions and reports and really be a powerful feature. So again, what we're going to cover: agreements, licensing, e-holdings, and then of course what's coming in the community. No, okay. So
Wait, I just want to say something. Jessie, our backgrounds, and we didn't want to bore you with what our backgrounds are, but we should tell you a little bit. I came from a public library background. Jessie came from more of a law library background. So for me, electronic resource management is kind of like still this world of like, what? Who? So last night I was saying to her, I said, I still don't even know what an agreement is. Like, tell me more about this. Because truly, I can understand we have databases in a public library, but get to the nitty gritty. I don't have that academic mind. I don't have that law library mind. So for me, it was a struggle to start that. So I think you're better at explaining it because you have that better understanding.
So when we were describing this last night, agreements are a way for you to keep track of subscriptions that you have. So this is an agreement with a vendor where you say, I'm going to have access to these databases or to these subscriptions. Think about proprietary systems. Before you migrated to Koha, you probably had a proprietary ILS. Yes?
True.
So you would have an agreement with that vendor that said, okay, we're going to have access to this piece of software or to this subscription for X period of time. That's your agreement.
A number of workstations, potentially. Oh, there we go.
Would be your licenses. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So then you have licenses. That's the contract of terms for the content that you have. So in most cases, in a proprietary system, you have a license to say you have access to 50 seats on this system. That's one way to look at it. A license agreement could also be for Westlaw, where you say, I have 100 users that can access the system. So this is a way for you to essentially create that and keep track of that information within the system. The third piece of it is e-holdings. So this is where you can track any of your local e-resources. Now, how many, bless you, people have a separate discovery system? Aspen, yeah. But how about another discovery system? Like EDS or Summons? Okay. So a lot of times you have a platform with ProQuest or EBSCO that allows you to manage those e-resources. Koha, when it first released the ERM, had a way for you to connect directly to EBSCO's e-holdings. If you have a subscription to the Holdings IQ, which is how EBSCO manages their e-resources in their platform, that API can connect directly to Koha. So you can view all of those databases, packages, and titles that you have with EBSCO. So that is a subscription with your EBSCO vendor or whatever contract or terms that you have. Right now, there is no direct connection to ProQuest's Summons. There's also, as you know, no connection to ProQuest Summons for the Koha OPAC, but there is for EES. So EBSCO has always been the first to kind of jump in and say, let's make these two connections. So that's why we have EBSCO first. You also have a way to bring in local holdings. So that would be every other vendor, JSTOR, ProQuest, Overdrive, Hoopla, if you want to bring all of those in. Mango, Gale, think of all the ones that you subscribe to. Now, those are the three things that we're going to show you today. In the 2305 release, which just came out in May, there was just a couple of updates where we have an expanded vendor view. But in 2311, which will be coming out in November of this year, we're getting a usage statistics module. Yeah, now this is exciting because now you'll be able to have sushi connections. And sushi, who knows that acronym off the top of their head? Nobody. Basically, I don't know what the whole full sentence is, but I can tell you that what it does is it harvests reports from the vendor and pushes them into the Koha database. So that way you can see titles that were viewed, titles that were clicked on in all of these databases. So Counter 5 reports can be pulled directly into your Koha system. So you can see that usage. There'll also be the ability to manually upload Counter 5 reports. And so what that is a way for you to say this vendor doesn't have sushi connections. And then you'll be able to bring those in manually. This is just kind of a screenshot of what's coming. So you can see you'll have a way to build custom reports. So you can look at the type of information. So whether you're looking for like title views, click titles within the system, and then over here, this will be how you can set up your data providers that have access to those sushi reports. So this is where the community comes into play. We've already talked to a lot of our libraries that are thinking about how they can use ERM, or if they're using Coral and moving over to now using Koha's ERM. This is where we're looking for feedback. I had a good conversation with Jeff. Jeff's at Brooklyn Law. They're just getting ready to start looking at things and start using an ERM for the first time. As people get in there and start using it, this is where we need that discussion to go to the community, because now they're looking at users to say, this is what we want to see in the ERM. While we were talking to Jack, we were talking about licenses. And when you have licenses with certain vendors, they may say, yes, you can use these resources for ILL. Some of your licenses may say, no, you can't use these resources for ILL. So like, that's kind of the future of where the ERM is going. Like, we want the feedback from the community to make it more robust. So the big thing that'll start next is the connections to acquisitions. So then you'll be able to track what you're spending with these electronic resources. More developments and usage statistics. So you can see cost per use for electronic resources, cost per use for print, and compare. Yay! And then connections to reporting, so you can pull all of this information in. So it's really exciting because many of you have said, like somebody said yesterday about the serials module not being as robust as needed, Bob, right? Yesterday in your prison libraries presentation. And so for a long time, Koha was just print centric, right? We had Great Ways in acquisitions to keep track of all this information, and we had print capabilities and serials. Now we have the flexibility in the ERM to bring all of these resources in. Oh, we're gonna pivot? We're gonna pivot. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is we're going to just show you how you can set this up. So are most of you on 2211 now? You have the new interface, you can see the new beautiful enhancements, okay. By default, the ERM will not be turned on, so we'll show you how to do that first. In administration, we can come over to our global system preferences, and on the left-hand side, you'll have a new tab that says e-resource management. So by default, it'll be set to disable. You can switch it to enable, and then that will turn the module on in the system. You'll see it on your first page. Now there's 3 other system preferences that will allow you to set things up. So the next 2 are EBSCO API key and customer ID. This is how we're connecting, if you have the subscription to EBSCO's Holdings IQ, to bring that information into the Koha system. The 4th system preference that you'll see there is how you want to set this up. So on the first example that we're showing you, this is more of a public focused Koha system. We have a second one pulled up where we'll show you the EBSCO connection, what that looks like, and we have some more like special ERM instances set up. So you can tell the system if you only want to have local e-holdings, if you don't have EBSCO, but then you can also check EBSCO if you have EBSCO as well, and then that will show both. With the introduction of the ERM, you of course have, I think, like 13 more authorized values. And this is a huge perk because now you can kind of customize the way you're naming things within the e-resource. If you have special instances or connections to like consortias or your state library system, like when I was in Florida working as a librarian, we have a lot of Gale databases that are available through the state library, right? So we had access to health databases and consumer databases and all of that. So you can actually track all of that information. Oh. So you'll see about 13 new authorized values in here. So if we just put in ERM, that'll kind of nail us down. So Koha will create by default some values in here, but you can absolutely come in and adjust any of these that match more of your policies and or procedures at your library. So for example, your law library may have different ones compared to your academic library, and you can go in and make any of these adjustments. So like if we look at a license status, this will give us, you know, three examples, controlling, featuring, historic. If you wanted to change historic to archived, you know, you could come in here and make those changes. So enabling it will turn it on in your system, and then once you have it turned on, know that you can come in here and add or adjust what you see in those drop-down menus. Okay, so now let's take a look at the e-resource management module. So when you first come in, you'll see a toolbar on the left-hand side. That will show you the 3 modules within the ERM that are turned on. So agreements, licensing, and e-holdings. We'll start with our agreements first. So again, agreements are where we're tracking those subscriptions or agreements that we have with the vendors in the system. Now, Kelly and I have a few in here as examples, so you can kind of see, oh, we were doing these on Monday minutes for the last couple of weeks to kind of lead up to this, so people would get a little familiar with it. So if you've been watching these, we've done a couple examples in here where you can see the name of the agreement, the vendor, the description, the status, and additional information. So the first big thing is it does connect to acquisition, so you could bring your vendors into the ERM. So you can see that it's connected to ProQuest, Gale, and EBSCO within the system. You can search for agreements within the system. You can also filter by expired. So once you start using this, you can have, 200 plus, agreements in here. So you can search, filter in the system. This is also like any other table in your Koha system where you'll notice each column can be sorted, ascending or descending. Anyone that's connected to an authorized value or another piece that you can select vendors from, I could come in and say, I just want to look at EBSCO, and that will bring those up. So this is another way that you can use the system to search. You'll notice here we have a free text box. So within descriptions, if you have something in there, you can remember, let's say the title, but maybe not anything else. I can just start typing those in. So I just did LinkedIn and that takes us right in. So there's multiple ways for you to search and narrow down. You can also export this. So maybe you were analyzing active subscriptions that you have. You can export it as a CSV or Excel file. You can also configure which tables are visible in your table settings, just like many of the other tables in your Koha system. Now, when you're creating a new agreement, we're going to go through the whole process. So this will give you a form where you have essentially two required fields. The first will be the agreement name. So this is anything that's going to help you identify what's in the system. So we'll just say this is our health databases. And we'll come down, we're going to select a vendor, and from here we can enter in any additional information. The only other required status or field in the system is status. So this is where we're actually telling them, is it active, is it closed, is it in negotiation? Another one that you can put in here, trial. So yeah. So, a lot of times people will say, we're going to test something out. Maybe we have a trial for 90 days where we're seeing if this is something that we like or not. You could put another status in there in where we go to set that up.
Drop-down menus exist in. Okay. Good job. Yeah. We're here. It's almost 9. They'll wake up at 9.
So you can come in here and essentially add additional fields in there. Trial is one that we see many people add in. So from here, we can come in and select that. Now, you'll notice if this was changed to closed, then my closed reason would pop up. And then you'll see either canceled, expired. Again, you can adjust these to make any type of update that you want.
I think that's helpful. Again, going back to the public versus the academic library, what terminology we're using.
Mm-hmm.
Could you say like it's a state database versus a local database? Would that be understood?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay. Down below, you have options to keep track. Is this perpetual? Is it a renewal? And then any other license information. So again, these are just connected to authorized values in the system. And then you can have a free text form where you can add in any license info. Now you'll see down below as we keep scrolling, we can connect the license directly, which will take us into the licensing module, and we'll show you that next. Periods. This is where you're going to keep track of the active subscriptions that you have for this agreement. So in theory, as you keep using the ERM, this will keep track of years of your time with this vendor. So it's a regular calendar picker, just like we would see with any of the other modules in the system. So we'll just say this is a regular calendar year. Down below, you'll see a cancellation deadline. Of course, the person we were just talking to about this, I don't see them, but this just came up. If you have like 90 days or 60 days to give your cancellation for something, you can set this and get a reminder to say like, this is expiring in X day. So you can run a report. Now, wouldn't it be nice if you got an alert or an email that said, this is expiring?
Make a decision.
Yeah.
This is in future comings to the ERM. For those of you that use Coral, you have workflows which allow you to get notifications about these kind of things. In Koha, they're developing a tasks module. So that means you'll be able to set up alerts for more than just the ERM. Cataloging, acquisitions, circulation, any type of reminder. So that is in development. We'll share that bug in Bugzilla also. Super excited about that.
I mean, I think about the reports. Reports
Yeah.
are like just scheduling your own reports.
Yes.
That's where I think a task schedule is important. I know, exactly. I mean, like, you guys be crying in the back.
Yeah.
Excitement.
Yes. The second thing you'll see is the ability to add users. So this allows you to come in and you can search for a staff member who may be maybe your ERM librarian or a subjects librarian, whoever it may be within the system, and then you can select that user and add them in. Now, a good suggestion that came from Jeff. Could you apply the same users to all of the agreements if there's always an ERM? Like this is the kind of stuff that we want to give back to the community because that's what we want to see, right? We want to make it as easy as possible when we're setting these up. If we want the e-resources librarian to be on every single one of these agreements so they get those notifications, absolutely. Again, the roles are connected to an authorized value, so you can customize all of these. Whatever you call your librarians or subject specialists or subject liaisons, whatever they're referred to at your library, you can customize this list. You can also add multiple people. So we're going to make Kelly a ERM librarian. You can come in and put multiple people in here. So a lot of times people will connect to like the finance office. So if the finance office or the dean or whoever or somebody at your library is the signer of these agreements and they're in your Koha system, you can also pull them in as well. The next thing you'll see here is a license. You can add it here, or when we're in the licensing module, we can add the license and then connect it to the agreement. So, I always feel like a broken record saying this, Koha always gives you multiple ways to do things. You can do things multiple ways in every aspect in Koha. This is just a multiple way to add it here or add it in the next field. You can also add related agreements. So this would be, let's say you had a parent contract, and then maybe 2 years later, you did like another agreement to expand what you had available. You can add that related agreement in here. So you could still create a separate agreement, but connect them. That way you can see them together if they were connected. Another example somebody gave us was, again, if you get databases through your statewide library, bringing them in and connecting them. If you have Gale through your library, but also Gale through the state library, you can connect them. And then the last thing you'll see down here is just an arbitrary way to bring in documents. So uploading the scanned agreement or PDF. Sometimes people will say, I want to keep track of all of the emails that went back and forth while I was negotiating or talking with my rep. If you want to save those rather than shoving them into a folder in your, inbox, if you want to keep a separate documentation of them and bring them in. So
Somebody knows everything.
Somebody knows everything, right? You move on to another position or you leave the library, somebody could see why you negotiated or got this great price, in the system. So this, you can upload any type of file. Once we're done, we're going to hit submit, and now we've created that agreement in the system. At any given time, you can come over and edit, and that will just take us back into that same form. And then again, you'll see one over here that allows you to delete the agreement. Once we've created the agreements, now we're gonna move on to licenses. So again, think of license as kind of the relationship that you have that says you have this many users or you have access to these things within the system. So you'll see it's the same setup as we looked with agreements. You can search within the columns, you can sort, ascending or descending, you can export, you can configure your columns within the system. You'll also notice up top with the search bar, when we were in agreements, you could do an agreement search. When we're in licenses, we can do a license search. It will also give you options to search packages and titles, which is the e-holding. So again, multiple ways to search for things in the system. So with licenses, when we create this will bring us in where we can set up our license name. So we're just going to stick to our health databases for our example this morning. We'll come in here and have our vendor, any type of description. And then we get down to our type. So again, these are pulling from our authorized values. These are the 4 by default. So we can say if it's, just a local license that we have with the vendor. And then for status, again, you're going to see active, expired, in negotiation, not yet active, or rejected. So I can think of, some examples where maybe you've had a trial, you said yes, and then you're like, oh, forget it, we're not doing this. So you can keep track of all of that information, like who said no, or like, why did we decide to get rid of this, or why did we cancel this? So you can go back and report on all of that. Like I can remember when I was working at the library and an attorney said, you know what, we don't want to keep this subscription anymore, we're going to get rid of it. You can come back now and search for all of those notes within the system. So this is just a really nice way for you to be able to track all of that information. And then again, you have your, date pickers where you can come in and select dates and times for start and end dates for this license. The last 2 options you'll see here is to connect your users. So again, I think an enhancement would be if this is connected to an agreement, just bring over the same librarians or have the option to bring over the same librarians or roles within the system. But for now, you can come in and, we'll keep Kelly in here as our ERM librarian. And then down below, we'll see the option to add documents. And this is where I can then come in and upload that document. Now, one of the questions that we're getting quite a bit, some people have never used an ERM before. Maybe you're tracking this on a spreadsheet or some other type of.
Sarah's laughing.
Yes.
Spreadsheet and the acquisitions model.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of people are like, this is going to be a lot of work to set this up, or scan in things that you may have in print in a file, or maybe you have them stored somewhere on a directory, in your F drive or wherever. In most cases, what we say is this is a good time to go through and clean things up. How much stuff is in there that you're really not sure about, or just weed through and make sure you're putting in the information that you want. One of the suggestions that we've given back to the community is in Coral, you can actually import a spreadsheet or a CSV file, and it will automatically create those agreements for you in the system. So that's something that we've made a suggestion to the community, that would be super helpful, especially for people that are using a spreadsheet. So instead of having to enter 100 individual agreements within the system, you would have that option to import a CSV file into the system to at least give you a jump start and not have to manually do them one by one. Okay, so once we hit submit, we've now created an agreement and a license within the system. So now I'm gonna move over to Kelly and she's gonna give you a tour of.
I've already told everybody my feelings, so I feel about this. So I'm going to talk about the e-holdings, but the local e-holdings that you would have, the ones that are not connected to EBSCO, but something that you might have within your library, whether that is through MARC files or not. It really just depends on libraries themselves. Under the e-holdings, since Jessie set up the system preferences to only allow local e-holdings, we don't see any other options for that EBSCO connections. We do have that local, and then we have packages and titles below. If I were to click the packages, again, we're looking at that same great kind of nice table configuration as Jessie talked about, the searching ability, using the drop downs to look for specific vendors or content type, anything that you've included in the existing packages or when you're creating those new packages. If I were to create a new package within the system, again, a nice familiar look form to what we've been looking at in this entire electronic resource management, giving that package a name. So we're going to stick with our health. Connecting that to a vendor within the system. We're going to say if this is a complete package or a local package. Again, this is a drop down. So we can choose what works for our library as we customize it. What are the terminology? How do we want to identify and look for this package in the system? And then content type. What kind of information is within this package? Are they all online resources? Are there print, streaming media? Quite a lengthy list here of the information that we could add for this package. And then just a free text note. I don't know if this is relevant. I'm just trying to pull from my experience at my public library. We had a couple databases that you couldn't access outside the library. Yeah. So maybe that would be what you would put in the note. I'm sure in the agreement or in the license, that's also something, but just having that information so everyone knows what's going on and what's available for this package. And then finally, if you did have a specific agreement with this package, so again, those kind of documents that we want to, or actually I'm going to click and add an agreement that I already have in the system. So here I'm going to go ahead and, oh, this is the down arrow. Jessie did it so much better. Ooh, scrolling, hold on, sorry. Yeah. Connecting that agreement or multiple agreements to this package. You can see after I've created that, I have the packages that I have in my system. I created one, I think, for a Monday Minute. So there's my Bloomsbury food one. And then we have a health online package, and that's a reference to it being an online reference package itself. The other thing that you have the ability to do is add the titles to those packages if you do get that information. I think that this would be, as Jessie's talked about, the future of an ERM, doing research and looking for titles within databases. It would be really great if we could import a CSV here. Or one of those KB files? KBARTS files. I found a lot of that access to packages that are out there for libraries, but not a lot of one that came with a MARC file. Now, of course, I was just roaming the internet, so I didn't pay for anything, but just something to look forward to.
Roaming the internet.
Just going around, swimming around, and finding some things to add to our, our big database here. But I was able to find a file of MARC records from that Bloomsbury and able to import it. So if you do get a file of records from that vendor through that agreement, you can import those using staged MARC records for import. So if you do get a a file of records, that means that they'll be in your system for the staff to see. They'll have those, whatever that vendor gives you, the 856 links. It can be suppressed in the OPAC if you don't want them to find it. It doesn't need to be suppressed. So think about what you think your patrons are going to need access to, or what staff are going to need to see. So going through that process of bringing it in through the staged MARC records for import. Now, the one thing I found through the staged MARC records for import, and again, I would say that it would be really helpful. Once you bring those files in, the ERM wants you to add them to a list in Koha. So you brought these titles in and now you need to put them into a list to import them into this ERM. I found that a little clunky. So I've imported those. I created a report to say, give me the biblio numbers that you just created for those titles, and then I could add a list. So just a little bit of configuration there. Again, I would love to see a CSV import to bring those titles in, or make that stage and import process connected to the ERM to say, I want to add these directly to that module. Now, if you have titles that you don't have a file for, you can absolutely create them within the system. You can add as much or as little information to the title as you add them. Again, CSV would be great, but here we have I think only one required field in this entire thing. So depending on what you want to add to that title, you can go ahead and do that. And I'm going to get really like health title. Yeah, perfect. Thanks. I have such creativity, I know. Again, there's a lot of information here, but I would say you'd probably want to add a URL if you were going to have this visible to anybody else. Another drop-down menu, any kind of date information, the title of the parent publication, access type. And then I could add this to an existing package within the ERM, so the one I've already created. And then go ahead and submit. Now, these other ones that I brought in, I did bring in through that MARC file, staged them, added them to a list. If you have gone through that process of importing those MARC records, you could go ahead after you've imported them, then go to import from a list and grab that list of titles that you brought in. So there's my Bloomsbury food one, but I would be able to see any titles from that list. Oh, they're in my list of. Oh, you brought one in too, Jessie, an A to Z list. As Jessie said, there is the ability to go up here, search those packages, search those titles. So if you were looking for something within the system that you needed or wanted to find, you can certainly do that. If you needed to come to either packages or titles, you can edit, come back to this. I'm going to go back to my titles because I don't think I showed edit. There's my edit. And this actually came in through a MARC file, so it filled in that details for me directly within this title list in the ERM. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to show one more example, and that is this is our other Koha site where we have the ERM set up, and we have EBSCO connected over here. So we just want to show you what that looks like. Oh no, doesn't look like we're getting into our other one. So if you've watched our Monday minutes, we did.
We should play that right now if you wanted. We could roll that up.
We showed what the connection looks like, where we pull in that information directly from EBSCO, and you can search for the packages, search for the titles. One of the big things is it's a bilateral API, which means the information can go back and forth from EBSCO into Koha. And if you make a change in Koha, like you update something, it will send it back to EBSCO's holdings IQ. So it is nice. Now we did, in our presentation, we brought up some just additional examples of other documentation that's out there. And that will,
There. You got it.
I know, this happened yesterday, we got stuck in a cycle of getting to the last slide. All of our pivots. Thank you.
Thank you.
So there's some great resources out there. We put 2 other vendors who have worked a lot on the ERM, PTFS Europe and Catalyst, who've also done some really good documentation on the ERM. So they have lots of good examples on there. We've done a whole Monday Minute series, and there's some other documentation on there about setting it up. So if you're doing it for the first time, that QR code will take you out to all the documentation and the links that we've provided in our presentation. So if you have questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
I'm Jeff from Brooklyn Law School Library. So I have a question about the packages and titles.
Yeah.
Let's say we have a package that isn't indexed in ABS. And so we already have hundreds of records in the Koha. If I understand, we can identify those and put those in the list, we can put those as titles for package.
Yes,
And so, and if we have like a database that isn't indexed, it's just one database, that's how we would put any record that's already in Koha, but not going to be imported in the file. Right, we look at titles, that's how we look at titles.
yes, yeah. And then you can create a bibliographic record.
Right.
But if you had the title already in your system, is that what you were saying?
Yeah.
Then you add it to a list,
Yeah.
then you can grab it and bring it into the ERM.
I have one other question.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're talking about plumbing features and integrating more with acquisition. So right now, the vendor's only thing
Yeah,
that's connected to acquisitions. What are some of the, I'm trying to envision how that would.
keeping like a cost history. What are you paying for these?
Okay, so all the orders.
Yeah.
To packages to titles.
Yeah. That's gonna be critical for feedback in the community, because now it's gonna change things. So that's gonna be critical where we need feedback from users as to how, this connection will happen.
Hi, I'm Brandy from KNL Leads, and I think I have similar questions to Jeff. I was wondering about package. And how you say that it's going to be connected to the acquisitions module in the future. Currently, anything that would be considered a package, in a law library, we don't get those packages like EBSCO.
Yeah,
And we have a bid record for the overarching subscription, and we've been paying on it for years. Will the bid record for that package be gonna be connected to the package record in the
right now it's through the titles, but Brandy, we'll check and see if anyone's like what the suggestion is in the community. Because right now it's at the title level.
Okay, and I also had a question about the place where you put stuff to do the API.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
is that configured to work just with EBSCO? Or could we kind of play around by putting different API stuff in there, connect to other things to see what happens?
that's a great question. Right now it's just EBSCO, but the community is always, Koha has very robust APIs, so if a vendor is willing to work with the community, that's something that we can set up, so we'll talk after this.
You get one over here.
Probably that would go like through plugins almost, maybe.
Yeah, like we do for ED.
Right, yeah, we do for ED.
Hi, Angela, from the Family Search Library in Utah, and I have 2 questions as well. So, say we can import a list of titles, and is there a limit to the number of titles on a list that you can import?
I haven't seen one yet.
Okay. Second question is this the place where we would limit the number of users or access points, or would that be be the API or vendor or?
Yeah, it would be the vendor for now. You can keep track of how many, like in the notes fields and say like this number of limits. One of the things I really want to express is if you've ever used Coral before, Coral had all of these fields exactly to say, you know, these are the limits.
1 to 10,
Yeah.
up to 100, yeah.
And eventually the Koha community you'll have all that information in there too, but you know, this was the first attempt to like get it in, get people using it and then make it bigger. So I envision that will eventually be one of the fields where you can track that, but it will not be the source of stopping, you know, only the 10 users. That'll come directly from your vendor. But there was, when Kelly was up here, there was a line where you could put the proxy in there.
Yeah.
So like you can keep track of that too.
Hi, Laura from the other side. I have a couple of things.
Okay.
First of all, I was just wondering about the level of permissions. There's information I think that my director is used to keeping close to the vest, including how much it costs. And they might not want to share that or some of the agreements or that kind of thing with people. I don't know, do I ask them all or do you want to?
Yeah, there is, I think there is a permission to just turn, like allow access to the electronic resource module or not.
Okay.
Laura, right now, currently, there's no
I mean,
money.
it's something you might want to think about.
Right, exactly, as it
Examples
expands.
that people might want that says they can see this, but not that.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, or see it, but not change it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, right.
For like reports. So right now it's just one, manage the electronic resource module, and that just gives you access to everything. But again, these are all things that are
Just,
Yeah,
Give them
definitely.
some-
Yeah.
that's
okay. Has there been any discussion in working with Springfield? A lot of, I was thinking in academic planning, use their guides, and I have a lot of this set up already in, you know, the data management piece there,
Yeah.
including URLs, and because we have all these guides that we've done for our classes and stuff. So maybe discussion with them is helpful.
We will reach out to Talia, maybe she's watching this and listening.
Okay, well,
That would be Talia, it's for
share, probably the academic side of it.
Yeah.
And the last thing is, if you are a CLC member, and a lot of us academics are, you use like manager to pull, they keep track of packages and you can pull the web records from that.
Okay,
So.
that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Great.
Does this system play well in open anthems?
I'm not sure. But we'll find out for you, Brad. Let's ask Nick when he comes back in here. We told Nick we would need him. Yeah.
Yes, not quite a discovery there, but
Yeah.
plug in once and we can get to once there.
I mean, I know that libraries are using Koha with Open Athens, so I would say yes, but we'll get Nick when he comes in here, because I know Nick has worked on that.
Hi, Alex from the Remote Catskill Library System. So we do some purchasing of electronic resources as a group. And for that purpose, I think this is a very handy tool for me. But I think if I wanted to allow access to some of our member libraries, electronic resources librarians or their reference librarians.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how we would organize that. So to use the example we were using before, we might have 15 active agreements with Ancestry Library Edition at one time.
Yeah.
So how can I organize this information so that a staff member of that library can find what's relevant to them?
Permissions. Or setting up a libraries drop down.
adding libraries to this.
Yeah.
feature.
Okay, that's something we could do.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
But I will say, we filed all of the bugs yesterday after our web pages presentation, so we will file all of the suggestions that were made for today's as well.
And one bug that's been really talked about most recently with the consortiums coming is adding acquisitions to library groups. So having that granularity, right now, vendors are not even library specific. So starting at that point, we have vendors in this ERM, so then you can start to see how you could branch those out. So that is our hope and dream for 2024. I hope somebody's listening to make that happen. 2024, adding libraries, more granularity to the acquisition module to allow for that, and thus bringing it into the ERM.
Thank you.
Jennifer from the library organization here. I just want to second that and also mention that, you know, we have 13 libraries with 13 different EBSCO connections.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, so even to reference.
Yeah.
Messages.
Yeah.
So as it is, it would be very difficult for
Yeah.
us to make use of it, but I mean, I can. Great.
When Vocal did their presentation yesterday, I remember how they said after they were like waiting for the 3-point release to make it more consortia friendly. If you think about just the journey that Koha has made over the last 23 years, how it's grown, especially for early Koha users, like how many consortial features are now available in the system. The community is actively like saying, we need this. We need these options to be here. We kind of moved away from independent branches and more towards library groups. So now the majority of people in the community are like, okay, let's get library groups to the place where multi-branch systems can manage different features within Koha. So that would get to our place where we could say, these are library specific for these 15 libraries, and you can group those together. So there is an active bug for acquisitions. We'll file another one for the ERM, but just making the library groups the place where multi-branch library network consortiums can manage all of that information in there. And I'm pretty sure Bob's library was the active push for lots of library groups integration.
Yes,
So
editing of items in a group, yep.
Hi, I'm Randy from Canada Meets again. Yeah, I have another question. This might be beyond the scope of what this is for, and I asked the same question last year, but I'm gonna ask it again. When you say users, it looks like what you need is the administrators or the people that can have access to that record, but since we're a special library, we actually assign people to these seats. If we have 10 seats on a service, we can assign them to 10 different attorneys. And we're currently using a crazy workaround to record who has seats on our subscriptions, and I was wondering if there's some way we could use this to track who has what actual patrons in the system are actual users of these subscriptions.
well, are they in your patron database?
Yes, but they are not staff.
That's okay, you can still pull, let's go back to. So let's say in these health databases, let's say we have only those few in there. I gotta think of somebody who's not a staff member. Look here. Let's just say one of yours said attorney. We just don't have attorney as an example.
We only have public and staff.
No.
So if we have one in here, we could add. So we have media. There we go. So like this individual here is not a staff, they're a non-resident, like a patron. So you could attach them in there. They don't have to be a staff member. We were just using staff as an example. So you could say
Seat as their role.
and add them in there. So then that would keep track. Now, that's not going to only limit those 10 people to accessing it, but that would at least give you which 10 attorneys have access to this.
All this work we've been doing for months. That's fantastic, thank you.
I have a question, we're not using, it's Jeff from Brooklyn, possible, we're not using EDI, but I was wondering if we're still thinking about it, with
Yeah.
EDI files. Tie into, having buildings into the ERM. How will those function?
So right now,
Once it's developed.
yeah, yeah, I mean, I would anticipate, yes, you would be able to connect those in there, but the development's not there yet, but. I'm gonna just be a broken record again and say, Jeff, this is where we'll want you to give feedback on. To the community about where this will be in there, but I anticipate yes, because. Academic, public, special libraries all use EDI or EDIFACT ordering, what Rhonda and Barbara talked about on the first day. So I anticipate when it connects to.
Acquisitions, the world is way larger.
Yeah. Okay,
Thank you so much.